Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and this amazing series. I am Aditya. In this series we are using Next.js and Garchi CMS to create an e-commerce store. So without any further ado, let's begin. Okay, so in the last video we saw about how to create this simple web page for a product where we created just the product title, just created a page for displaying product images, title, description and all those things. Now here we will go forward and work with this add to cart functionality. Now if you see the API docs, if I go over here and then to orders, then create an order. So the API expects that you handle the cart on your side. You can use server side or client side to handle the cart, but at the end you need to make sure that you're just using a certain schema for the cart items, or in the other words for the line items when you create an order using the API. So in that we need to provide the product ID that is being added to the cart, the name of the product, the quantity, the delivery date if it is there. Also we need to specify for each product over here, we need to specify the attributes. So we need to specify like what was the attribute selected. So in this case, this is the book. They selected to have it on date, and what was the date selected? This was the 21st March. If there is an additional price for that date, if you select some other date, something like that, and this sub attribute ID. So let's understand the structure first. So each product has attributes. In this case, here the web dev book as a attribute as a date. Then each attribute has sub attributes, or you could say the value of those attributes. So date could be the value 21st March, it could be 22nd March, it could be 24th March, and each value has a price, additional price associated with it. So to give you a best example, if you're ordering a food from any app or any online website, you'll see that there's a base price for the food, and when you add the toppings or extras in that which comes as attributes for that food. So let's say for a pizza there are toppings. Some toppings are free, some toppings are paid, and as you add them, the paid one especially, the price of that pizza gets increased. In the same way, you put the base price for your product, and then you have additional prices through the attributes if there are any. Like there is no hard and fast rule, it's just an additional price if there are any. So I have already created a code for cart to save some time because I want to focus more time on the explanation. Don't worry, the code will be on GitHub. So if you guys want, you can open the repo and just go along with me in that code so that we are on the same page. So the first thing is I have just added a icon of cart over here. That we can get it from Hero Icons React. So the library is already installed. So if I go to package.json, here you will see Hero Icons React over here. Okay, so Hero Icons, they have like beautiful collection of SVG icons. So it supports Vue and React both, and those icons guys comes as a components, and they are Tailwind CSS SVG icons. Then so I've just added the SVG icon over here and the number of items in that cart. So currently there are 3 items in the cart. Okay, now next thing is we have the add to cart button. Now this button will, when I click on it, it will trigger a dialog box. That dialog box I have taken from Headless UI. So if you see, there is another library I have installed which is Headless UI React. It also comes for Vue, and like it's for Vue and React only. So Headless UI is a open source library which has amazing Tailwind components. So if I open it in my browser quickly to give you a glimpse of it, Headless UI, and you will see React is by default, so you can also see it for Vue, but let's focus on React. Here we have the dialog. So this is the one I have used. So I've just went into the code, took this code and modified it accordingly. I'll show you what has been modified. So pretty amazing library, I would say. If you are looking for some ready-made components, this is one of them. Like you can use this library as well along with our Adirane's React library. Well, next thing is we have this modal, and now it is showing us the attributes. So it is saying us like to select a date for this product. So it has 4 options. Now if I go then to the shop, then to products. So currently I'm logged in as a seller. So if I go to products, now this is the product that we are looking at, and if I click on these 3 dots over here, it opens the attributes. Now it says the name of the main attribute is date, then the minimum the customer should select is 3, Of course, it's just an example. It doesn't make sense to select more than one date, but just an example. So okay, going back over here, so they should select 3, and these are the options that are available. Now you will see each sub option has an SKU as well. So we have first option as 2nd March, the additional price is 2, then 3rd March, the additional price is 1, 4th 1, 5th 1. Now if I want to add another one, I can just go over here, click on this green button, so it adds a new one. Oops, March. Then price, let's say no additional price, so I'll just save it as a 0. And once you click it, you should see this green message saying that attribute tree saved for date, because this is what we are modifying. We are saying select, like creating the attribute tree for the date. Now if I go back over here, we are not seeing 5th March because we haven't refreshed. So if I refresh the page, go to add to cart, there it is, we have the 6th March. So this is how you can have the attributes created for a product. Not necessary that you have to create only one main attribute. You can create more than one main attribute. So if you want to create a new one, just click over here, and if you go down, you should see a blank window to create a new attribute tree. Just make sure you are pressing the save button whenever you create an attribute tree. And also when you create a main option, you need to make sure that you're also creating a sub option for each main option. Next thing is, if I go back over here again, like we have these attributes, now we have to select minimum 3. Now you would say, what if I want to have only 3 options and not more than that? Now this is all about from the programming side of you. So what we need to do is that minimum number. So if I go back over here again, open this, it says minimum 3. You can consider it as maximum for yourself as well. So it all depends on the coding logic, like how you're writing the coding logic. So if you want to have it like minimum 3, then you keep it open. If you want to have it like just 3, you keep it just 3. So to give you an example of how I can only select 3 and not more than that. So if I go with say 1, 2, 3, and when I click on this, boom, you can select max 3 dates. So you can write the coding logic accordingly, but just need to make sure that the number here, it's something like you're either considering it as a minimum or as maximum. Definitely I feel like the labeling should be something different, but yeah, this is what it's represent for. Okay, so we have the dates, then we add to cart, and once we add to cart, it goes as a product inside the cart. Now let's look at inside the code. So first let's begin with this cart.js, which is the assets. Inside the assets folder, you will see the cart.js file. So there are 2 options here now. So server-side cart, client-side cart. Now if you have seen my shopping cart video for Next.js, I have just not used that, but actually just it's somewhat like similar to that one, where we have cart created on the client side. You can also use server side. For that you might want to use Firebase, or you might want to use your own database. Next, now whether you use server side cart or client side cart, you have either local storage to store the cart once it's saved, or you could use the not local storage, so sorry for that, the global states, or you could use something like Redux toolkit or some global state management system. What I have done is I have used React context. So if I go to this underscore app.js, we'll come back to this cart.js again. So here we have the cart context. Now this cart context is coming from components, context, cart context. Now inside this cart context, we just say, okay, we want to create a context with blank array, like the initial value is blank. It's just going to be an empty array. So we have the cart context. Next, if I go back over here, we have some states associated with that cart context. Now, if you are new to this context concept of React, so if you want to declare some variables globally and you want them to be used in all the components or most of the components, or especially in the nested component tree where you have components 10 level down, maybe more than that, then context is a very good way to share states between that particular component tree. So how it works is whatever components are inside this context provider, oops, I guess I'm gonna missing, yeah. So inside this context provider, so line number 22 to line number 27. So in short, our entire app, the entire app or all the components inside this context provider will have access to our cart variable. And whichever component changes the cart variable, other components also reflect that change value. okay, because this is more like a global value now. So first we created a state of cart with empty array. Then we are saying if there is a cart, then we just set the cart. We'll get back to that. And we are passing it to our context provider. So there is a provider, and then these will be the consumers. So these will consume that value. So we are passing it to the providers through the provider, and we are saying that we want to pass the value, so the state, and the useState function responsible for changing that value. So set cart. So that's why we are passing it as an array over here. Okay, so that's done. Now how to use it? Well, to begin with, let's first see what do we have inside this product details, because we have that add to cart button over here, which is being lazy loaded over here. Now I have also added extra props to this product details, especially the details component. So yeah, this one. So here I have added the product ID. The attributes is a new property, or the props that I have added here, because we need to make sure that the prop, like if the product has attributes, we ask customer to select attributes. If the product doesn't have attributes, why to ask them to select the attributes? So we don't ask them to select the attributes, we straight away add it to the cart. Okay, so details component having these things. Now here inside details, so if I just close this part and this part, because it's mostly of cleaning things. Cool. So here we have add to cart button over here. So we are passing to that add to cart the product ID, we are passing the name and the attributes. Okay, so once that's done, let's go to the add to cart function. Now component. Now inside this add to cart component, first we need to get our cart, which is coming from the context. So we use a hook known as use context. So use context allows you to resolve the values of a context. Okay, so when I say resolve the value, so whatever values we have passed over here, which are these values over here, we can collect it using this use context hook. So here I'm saying use context and the what context I want to refer, which context I'm referring to. So I'm referring to the cart context. Make sure when you're using this cart context, you are importing it, and if you are importing it, make sure you are exporting it from here. Okay, so cart context, we want the values from there. Okay, so use context, we are passing cart context there. Next, these are the modal states. So function to open the modal, so set is open or toggle the modal, is open, just a boolean value to make sure whether to show or not the modal. By default it's going to be of course false, because we don't want to show the attribute modal. Next we have selected options and set selected options. So selected options refers to whenever a customer goes to, let's say, this product page, then by default they haven't selected any attributes, even though the product is already in the cart. So they click on it, and then the selected options would be whatever attributes they select. And all I have made sure here is whatever they select, they just follow this schema. Okay, so each selected attributes will be an array. So from here, so each element in that array would be a key value pair of attribute name and selected options, where attribute name resembles the main attribute, selected options resemble the sub attribute selected for that options. Okay, so it's again going to be an array. Now let's go to the HTML part of it, then we will come back to the JavaScript part again. So first we have the button which says add to cart, and it will just open the modal if there are attributes. If there are no attributes, it will straight away add to the cart. Next we have the transition component. So this is the modal component that I have collected from the, or I have taken from the Headless UI. So here you will see like it's actually exactly the same. It's nothing different. It's just the text has been changed. So here we have select options, then the attributes are listed over here one by one, and the button to add to cart. Okay, so let's see the attributes part. So first we will see if the attributes exist. So does this product has any attributes? Okay, it has the attributes, great. Then we display those attributes one by one along with their sub attributes. We have the title. So here our first attribute is date over here. So we are saying okay, attribute.name, which is date. So select date. Then we can also put over here how many you can select. So I can put it in like this, max, and then I could say attribute dot minimum. here the wording is minimum, but I'm saying here max. So if I want to say you need to select minimum this, then I just need to make sure that I'm taking it as something like this. But if I want them to select at least maximum 3, then I have to just put here max and then modify the code accordingly. Currently I'm using it for max, but you can also use it for minimum. So for each sub attribute, we are putting either a radio button or a checkbox. Now why radio or a checkbox? Because if the main attribute allows only to select one sub attribute, not more than that, then in that case we will need a radio button. But if we want to select multiple, then we need a checkbox. So we just go with the checkbox over here. Now we are saying that, okay, whenever this checkbox is changed, we will run a function. We'll go back to that function of set option. Then we are passing the value. Now this is the bit tricky part over here. So if I go back to the docs again, we need to say what is the main attribute name and the selected sub options. So to make sure that we follow this schema, by the way guys, this is my methodology. You are free to use your methodology however you like, but our end goal is to reach this schema. So you can use any methodology as long as you are able to reach this schema. Let me know in the comment section if you have given a try what methodology you use, so that others can learn as well. And also it could be a good learning for me. Going back to the code again, cool. So we have the attribute ID which resembles the main attribute ID, which will be this 32. You will come to know why we are using it, and we are putting this pipe symbol as a separator. And after that we are passing the sub option, like the list of options in that attribute tree, and we are just converting it to a JSON tree. So here we have 5, so each one of these would be like, so if I open it actually in inspector tool, then it will be easy to see. So here you will see like 32 and the option for this input button, which is 3rd March. You will see the 3rd March over here. Same for the other one. If I go over here, 2nd March, then the attribute like the attribute details like the price, the SKU, the name, and all those things. Sorry, sub attribute details. So we are just putting it like this. Then once we have that, we also put the name of that sub attribute. So when user selects it, we know what, like user should know what to select. So once it is selected or once it is changed, a function is triggered which is set option. So let's go to that set option function. Okay, so inside this set option, we are first splitting our input option value. So this value over here, primarily let's on it first. So this string over here. So whichever string or whichever option is selected, that value we need to split it. So from that split, we will get an array. So this split function in JavaScript is used to convert a string to an array with the separator that you have passed. Then we will say, okay, we got our option array, that's great. Then we need to know which main attribute this option is referring to, because currently we just have one, which is date. Suppose there is another one which is time. So in that case, we just need to make sure that we are segregating like sub options for the main options correctly. So what we are going to do here is we are going to say for all the attributes for that product, filter the one whose main attribute ID, which is this ID, matches to the ID of this selected option. So currently we are dealing with date. So this option array's first index will be 32, which is the main attribute date's ID. Perfect. Then we have the sub options. So we need to know what sub option was selected. So the second index of that option array would be the sub option selected. Next, we need to show, has the customer already started adding this options for this product? So suppose if there was date and time, has the customer already added time details or date details? So we just need to make sure that if they're already there or not. If they are not there, if this radio button click was their first click, then what we do is we just add or create an array with attribute name as main attribute name. So that's the main attribute name selected over here, which is date. Then the selected options, which is going to be again an array. So we say sub attribute, whatever is the sub option name, sub attribute ID, that the ID, the price. So if I go back over here, making sure that the schema is followed exactly like this. over here. So if there was nothing in that selected options, we create a new array. If there was something before, so what we need to do first is we need to filter that selected options and first need to make sure are we selecting sub option for an already added main option. Okay, this is confusing, I know. So suppose currently we are dealing with date and we are selecting a date, a sub option for that date. So we need to make sure, is this sub option's main option, which is this date, is it already added in the array of this selected options? If it is added, all we need to do is inside that sub option, we just need to push it inside that array. If it is not added, then we add it as another new attribute. So we say, okay, let's say there was time and the time is not added before. So times, let's say, or let's create quickly. So I'll show you how it works. So if I go back over here, let's say I want to create another sub option. Let's say I want to create time. And let's say I just require one. So let's say 9 to 10. No additional cost for this. Save. So this is added. Now if I go back over here again, quick refresh and add to cart. Now you see there is another option to be considered, which is time. So suppose I'm selecting currently date, so I'm dealing with dates. Okay. Now when I go to time, so this main attribute time is a new option. Now you see that we just need one. So this is a radio button. So it's going to be a new option. So here we make sure, are we dealing with the same attribute or are we dealing with the different main attribute? So here we are using the spread operator for that. So what spread operator does it converts that array into another array of each individual element. So selected options will be spreaded over and will be converted to like individual elements for this big array. And inside that we are adding this new main attribute and we are just using our useState function. Perfect. What if we are dealing with the same one, in this case date? So in that case, what we are going to do is we will first see if how many number or how much can we add, sub options can we add for that main attribute. If it's just one, we just simply replace the current sub option, okay, which is being added. So we just replace the current sub option, and that for that we are using the map function. Okay, so we just replace the current sub option. Else if suppose we are allowed to add more values, but we need to make sure that we stay in the limit. So suppose we are allowed to add minimum 3. So this is where I mean like you need to change in the coding if you are dealing with min max for that number that you're specifying. So here I'm referring to I want to allow only like maximum of 3. So if I want to allow maximum of 3, I need to make sure that the selected sub options, so each selected options, when we map on this over here, we are referring to this selected. So each selected options list length, if it is greater than equal to main attribute.main, actually it should be less, but if it is greater, we just push an alert message saying that you cannot add it. You can maximum add 3 for this date, and we just set that checkbox to be false because we don't want it to be checked as like a checked. And we just return an empty object because for map we need to return something. Then, okay, what if we are allowed to add more and we are in limit? In that case, we see, okay, we are in limit. Okay, that's great. We are the current attribute we are dealing is the same. Okay, that's great. Then we see if it is checked, because if it's checked, we add. If it's unchecked, we remove. Simple. If it's unchecked, then we remove it. And to remove it, we just use the filter function where we say for all the selected sub options for the particular main option, whichever option ID is not equal to the selected option, we just remove that because that's the one which is unchecked. And at the end, whatever is mapped, we just set it using our useState function. And that's it. Like we just have our cart set. Now if I go back over here, I have consoled some things over here. So child in the list should have a key. Oh, I guess I'm forgetting key property somewhere. Add to cart. Okay, I guess I'm forgetting key property somewhere. Let's see where I'm forgetting. So yes, I'm forgetting it over here. So key will be, okay, all good. Cool. Now let's remove this, and in our use state where we change our attribute, let's create a use state. So use state, sorry, use effect, what I'm doing, use effect, and here we change this on selected options, and we here console.log selected, and we show the selected options. Cool. Let's go back over here again. So selected by default is gonna be blank. So if I go back over here, let's remove this all. Now 2nd March, selected is going back over here, date, so date and the selected options, 2nd March and all those things according to the schema that API is expecting. And then the next one, so let's see if it's added to the date again. If I go back over here, so 2 added over here, that's great. And now if I will go for time, so here we go, we have 2 array now, so date and time. So time over here, selected sub option 9 to 10, 53. Now if I go for 11 to 12, this 9 to 10 should be substituted. So if I go back over here, and we are getting an error, it says undefined because we missed something. Alright, so the thing we are doing is that, okay, we are dealing with the new attribute. Okay, so when the time is added for the first time, it's gonna get added to the array straight like this, to the selected options. But when we are changing the time, here we are only focusing on the one which equals to the main attribute name. But what about those which are not added before? Oh, sorry, which are already added, but we are not changing them. So in that case, we just need to return them as it is. So what we need to do is, so this if is going to check for minimum 1, same main attribute name. This is going to check for going over the limit. This is going to check for under the limit. And if everything is like nothing is being satisfied, then in that case we just return the key prop. Okay, I'm missing the key prop again somewhere. Let me see where I'm missing it. Let's make it like this. So this is gonna be main attr, and this will be attr and whatever it is. So attribute ID, oh silly me, attribute.id should be, yeah, should be fine now. So here if we go back again, remove this, there we go. So 2nd March, all good. 3rd March, very well. Let's see, yes, very well. 4th March, very well. If we remove the 4th March, still very well. Oh, not very well actually. 4th March is coming here because we removed it, and here we just need to see why it is not being removed. So let's do this. Let's say here we do console dot, oh no, sorry, it's sub option actually, because that's the one we are referring to, the one selected. So you just need to make sure all the selected options doesn't have this one, we just send them back again. Okay, the problem here is, like, if I go to this if loop, this condition over here, it says that if selected options dot length is less than the minimum requirement. Now when we add all 3 of them, at that time we like already are equal to the minimum number, because when 3 are there, like 3 equal to 3, so this condition will never be met and it will never go in the loop of like removing it. So what we need to do is, here we need to put equal to, and then if we go back over here, next thing we need to do is just quick refresh, and then here we say 2nd March. Okay, let's just remove this, so we just see the set one, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and go to 9, 10. Okay, all are there. And now when we go over here, we want to remove 4th March, so remove the 4th March. So it says unchecked 4th March, and it should remove our 4th March from the selected option. There we go. And at the end we add to cart, and there we go, we have the 4th product added and the cart count also increased. That's great. So if I go back over here, you will see like so this is the last product that we had with these attributes. Well, this one had these attributes. So now let's see how this add to cart is working behind this. So first we have 2 add to cart functions, with attributes, without attributes. So with attributes, it's just going to call the add to cart function. Without attribute, it's just like just going to add it as it is. So if I go to the cart.js, here I'm using the object-oriented programming approach, or just creating a class of cart. This is because I want to make sure that this instance value is maintained as or when the page is not refreshed. So we just need to make sure if it's dealing with just one component, the instance value is maintained. So here I'm checking that, okay, so first create the cart class, then the constructor will make sure if there is a cart already in the local storage. If it is there, we get it from the local storage and add it to our cart instance or cart variable. So here our public instance cart, we just put it the already created cart. If there is no already created cart, we put the blank array. Load to storage function. So this is another function here. So what this does is, whenever we add item to the cart, we put that cart again to the local storage, because we need to make sure that we have the fresh instance of the cart in the local storage every time. Afterwards, we have the add function. Now this add function, what it is going to do is, it's a very simple function. What it is going to do, it will first check in the cart if there is an item with the product ID which is being added. Okay, so if that item is already there, then we need to do the following steps. Let's first go with the condition where the items are not there. So in that case, this if loop will run. Okay, if it is not there, simply we add it to the cart. We say whatever is the cart, we just spread it over and add the new product inside it with the same schema. Now this schema, again, we need to follow the API schema, which is this one. Now, what if the product is already there in the cart? Now here we need to check if we are adding the same attribute tree for the same product. If we are doing so, one thing you notice, guys, like I'm not taking quantity over here. Like I'm not asking user to input a quantity like 2, 3, 4, 5. What I'm doing is they keep on adding to the cart, and if the attributes is the same, if the attribute tree is the same, that product's quantity increased by 1, or it's increased by 1. Now how to see if the attribute tree is the same? Well, pretty simple. We convert the attribute tree to JSON string, and if those two strings are same, that means the attribute tree is the same one. So in that case, we just increment the quantity by 1. If, and how we do this, we go inside the cart, we map in that cart, we check for each product, whichever product ID matches to the current iterated ID or iterated product ID. We see if it's the same one, then we just modify it accordingly by adding the quantity. If it's not the same one, we return it as it is. Now what to do if, like in this case, we went for each card, but what to do when the attribute tree is different? Then in that case, here we are taking a flag. So we start with a flag of false. We go inside here. If the attribute tree is same, we say, okay, it was same. If it was not same, simply add it as a new product. So even though the product ID is the same, but the product is different because the attributes are different. So for instance, suppose I have a t-shirt. Now that t-shirt will have color as red, blue and yellow, for instance. Now if I take a yellow t-shirt, then, and for the same product, if I take a red t-shirt, then in that case I'm taking the same variation of the t-shirt, but just the attributes are different. So they should be added as a separate products rather than adding them as a same product. Okay, so that's why we need to just make sure that the attribute trees are different. Now once the cart is added, we just load it back to the storage and we return the cart instance. We need to return this so that we can add it to our use state, because remember our use state is a context variable or it's a context property, so we need to make sure that we are updating it somewhere so that we can reflect it everywhere wherever it is used. So we set it using our context over here, so our add to cart function. So if the attributes are provided, that's great, we add the attributes. If they are not provided, we put the blank array. In case if we don't have any attribute, in that case we add straight away without any attributes, and we don't go to this open modal function. We can also close the modal here if required, like after adding this we can close it. So here I can say close modal, and yeah, it should be fine. But we also, one thing which is a very important thing we need to make sure is that whenever the cart is changed or whenever, like whatever happens, we need to initiate the instance of that cart. Okay, so how do we initiate it? We go back all the way to the top. First, take a useState property of cart instance. So it should be somewhere here. There we go. It is here. Actually, should have put it on the top over here with the same use states over here. Yep. So we initiate the cart instance with null, and on the use effect, we say that okay, whenever there is a cart, we just initiate the instance, and then that's it. We just keep on adding product to the cart, and actually that's pretty much what we have so far. Now in the next video, what we are going to do is we will create a cart page to render this cart products that are being added, and then we will use our CMS API or SaaS APIs to create an order. But before that, we also need to make sure that we have the Stripe payment handle on our side, because this create an order API assumes that you're calling this API on a successful payment transaction. So let's see how to do that all step by step. So if you have any questions in this cart section, please let me know in the comment section. And if you like this video, please hit the thumbs up button. If you feel this video is worth sharing, please share with your network. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe to my channel. So see you in the next video. Till the next time, goodbye.